As many of y'all know, when I was growing up, I loved and played baseball all my life as a little kid. I played pretty much in the course of my Little League career. I probably played in pretty much every position. I wasn't quite athletic enough to be like middle infielder or center fielder. I was slow enough, but for the most part, played corner positions, played outfield. But the one position that I never was very good at was pitcher. And whenever I was, when I was about 11, 12 years old, our rec team was particularly bad, and I was one of them that I got enlisted into pitching. Now, when you're in Little League, at that time, I was not throwing hard at all. Like, I didn't break the speed limit in a school zone, right? Like, it was not pretty. But what would happen is that I would get called in to pitch because we just didn't have that many good pitchers. And it's one of those things that whenever you're in Little League, if you're called on to pitch, there's some days that you got it and things are great, and then there are some days that you don't got it and things are terrible. Well, most of the time, my pitching career was pretty much I don't got it a lot more than I got it, right? There was this one day in particular, for some reason, I was called on. I start the game. I get through the first inning, barely. I get through the second inning, barely. I get to the third inning, and I ain't getting through the third inning. Start walking people, start getting wild. My arm's just not working. I know where I want the ball to go. I go through all the mechanics that I'm supposed to, and the ball just don't go there, right? Like, I just remember as I was going through, it's just like I'm trying to aim it, and it's not working, and things aren't going well. We're losing already because I'm not good at pitching. I don't want to pitch, but for some reason they asked me to pitch. The visiting team dugout, they start cheering and chanting and hollering at me and heckling me. And now, like, when I throw a strike, I look at them like, what? And then I throw 3 balls in a row, and it's just not pretty, right? Everything about this is just going really, really bad, really, really quickly. So my dad, I remember, I walked my 14th batter of the inning or whatever it is, and at this point, my dad comes out the dugout because he's the coach, and he comes out the dugout, and as he does, the time blew, and he starts walking towards me, and as he starts walking towards me, I see in his eyes that he's coming to take me out the game. I see his hand out like he wants the ball, and I remember he got about 20 feet away from me, and what I did was, one of the rules in my household growing up was you might not be good, but you can choose your attitude, right? My mom, my dad, this is one of the things they drilled in me. Well, this is an opportunity. I'm frustrated. I'm angry. All this stuff's going on. My dad walks towards me. He's asking for the ball. And as he gets about 20 feet away from me, I walk past him and I just throw the ball over my head out of frustration. And my dad looks at me. He says, "Stop." And I freeze. Now, this is in front of all of our all of our parents, all the other players. He just yells at me and he goes, "Stop." I freeze. I look at him. He said, "You were going to go in the field. Now go sit on the bench." This is in the middle of the Raceland ballpark, right? He's barking like, I think a game on another field stopped. Like, it was bad. Like, I was like, okay. I look at him and I'm frustrated and I'm angry because not only did I look bad, now I'm embarrassed and all this kind of stuff. So I turn and I start walking to the dugout. And as I start walking to the dugout, I look up and I thought it was bad in the middle of the field whenever my mom was waiting for me at the dugout. And through grit teeth and fake nails that look like claws, she looks at me and she goes, "Over here now." Uh-oh, right? She took me down the foul line, outside the fence, and she decided to let me know exactly how unacceptable that was. And again, I think everybody in the ballpark heard how unacceptable my attitude was. I think everybody in the tri-state area heard how unacceptable. I love my mama, but anyway. What happens is we lose the game, game's over, all right, all this stuff, but I'm sitting on the bench and I am just like, I feel tiny. I'm embarrassed, I'm like all these kind of things. And my mom, what we do is that after the game, the whole team gets in a little huddle and we kind of go over things and, all right, we got to do this, we got to do that, and get the little pep talk from the coach. Well, whenever everybody gets in the huddle, my mom comes and grabs me out of the dugout and says, "Follow me now." Basically, she could have said heel, right? And I was going to follow her. And so we walk up to the thing, and she looks at everybody, and all my teammates, and she says, "He's got something to say." And then she walks away. And I'm sitting there in front of all my teammates, just kind of like, sorry, guys, I messed up. I shouldn't have acted that way. I suck at pitching. Like, I just like go through all the things. I'm like the litany of apologies, all these kind of things. All right, everybody, all my teammates look at me and they're like, no problem, man. Hey, it's a bad day. We're gonna be better next time. All these good things, great. And now I'm back in the fold. It was one of those things that my parents, they first of all, they love public humiliation. So whenever I get a chance, and especially if they're at Mass, I make sure to do this. So like yesterday, Mom and Dad were here, and I was like, they're right there. Anyway, so, but that was the second thing, though, is like the most important thing for them was like, you're going to choose your attitude, and when you mess up, you have to apologize. If you're going to mess up, you're going to own up to it. You're going to get away with it. You're not going to act the fool in front of everybody. What's going to happen is that if you mess up, you're going to apologize. You're going to seek forgiveness from the people that you embarrassed or that you reflected wrong on. It's interesting because every time we come to Mass, we do the same thing. Last week we talked about Mass, and we were talking about what it meant to participate in Mass, with this theme of active participation with our liturgy. Well, the interesting thing is that when we start Mass, we go through the exact same kind of thing as an embarrassed 11-year-old that just showed an attitude at a ballpark. Because every time we walk into a church, every time we come to Mass, whether it be a daily Mass or a Sunday Mass, you and I, we come before each other and the Lord, and we say we have messed up. Sometimes it sounds like this. I confess to Almighty God and to you, my brothers and sisters, that I have greatly sinned. In my thoughts and in my words and what I have done and what I have failed to do through my most grievous fault. Therefore I ask, brothers and sisters, Blessed Mary, ever Virgin, all the angels and saints, and you, my brothers and sisters, to pray for me. Have you ever paid attention to what we do when we walk into church? That we take a moment at the very beginning of the Mass that we celebrate, at the very beginning of the pinnacle of our worship, at the very beginning of the fulfillment of our faith, by first recognizing, I am a sinner. There are some things that we as priests, we don't say, because there's supposed to be a dialogue in Mass. Everybody says the Confiteor together. Everybody says the I confess together, because I am no different. I'm a sinner too. But every time we walk into Mass, what we do is we first recognize, I have sinned. I fall short. And we all do. Because we have to recognize where we are before we can let the Lord work. That's one of my favorite parts about today's gospel. I know I read the longer version. I apologize if you got dinner plans tonight, right? But in today's gospel, one of the things it's so powerful, it's one of the richest gospels that the church gives us throughout the course of the year. It's the woman at the well. And there are a bunch of different layers of what's going on here. There's a bunch of different things that we can reflect on. But one of the things that I think is most important and most powerful is that the woman, she doesn't want to come to grips with the reality of the situation. And when she does, God shows up in a powerful way for her. There's some details in today's gospel that if we're not paying attention or if we just kind of breeze through, we can miss. One of the first details that we hear at the very, very beginning is that whenever Jesus comes to this well, John, when he writes it, he makes sure to tell us what time it is. It was about noon. It's the middle of the day. Now, we think of that and we're just like, okay, cool, we got travel plans, we know the itinerary or something like that. But what's really happening here is that John is trying to draw out a bigger point. Because notice what happens when Jesus stops at this well and he's waiting for a drink. There's this kind of divine appointment that takes place, and this woman from the neighboring town shows up at noon to come draw water from the well. Now, we hear that as with people with interior plumbing, and we don't understand what's going on here. But in the first century, what's actually taking place is that this is actually would be very, very odd that somebody would come to do this kind of labor in the middle of the day. Getting water for the household is kind of hard labor. You ever picked up a bucket of water? It's heavy. So oftentimes what would happen is that the women that went in the first century, what they would do is that the women would come from different towns. They would go to the neighboring well, the neighboring water hole, wherever it was. They would get their water, but they would do it early in the morning when it was cooler. By doing it in the middle of the day, the Mediterranean has a similar kind of climate as us. If you're doing something in the middle of the day, it's hot. It makes hard work seem really hard. Well, this woman coming in the middle of the day, there's a couple of things that would be odd about this. Is mainly, number one, she would have been alone because she wouldn't be with the other women who were all doing this about the same time. She was a little bit of an outcast. And we come to find out why later on in the gospel. As her and Jesus have this exchange, as they go back and forth, and Jesus says, give me a drink, and she says, well, why do we even, like there's cultural rivalry, there's all kind of different layers of stuff going on here. But what happens is that Jesus starts to tell her that if you knew who was talking to you, then you would ask me for a drink. And there would be this water that you'll never thirst again. And her response to Jesus is really, really powerful. The woman said to him, Sir, give me this water, that I may not thirst, nor come here to draw. You see, if this woman has a reputation, if she's a little bit of an outcast, if she doesn't want to be seen and doesn't want to be in public, then it would be something that every time she goes to get the water in the middle of the day, it's a little bit of a reminder of her spotted past, of her not so ideal situation she finds herself in. It's a little bit of an ongoing reminder that it's just her reputation is there kind of haunting her. And she says, give me the water so I no longer drink and I no longer have to exploit myself to this kind of ridicule, this kind of criticism, this kind of like public spectacle. But give me what you got for me, Jesus. His response is very interesting. Jesus said to her, go call your husband and come here. She was asking for water. She put her order in for water. She says, look, give me whatever I can get. If you're going to, have a well that's going to, a pot that's never going to be empty, awesome, that would be amazing. If you're going to do something like this, great. But give me what you can give me. And his first thing to do is to point at the place that she's trying to hide from him. The cause of her reputation, the burden of resentment that people have towards her, the reason why people are critical of her. Jesus leans into the uncomfortable spot, the thing she's trying to hide, and says, that's where I want to work. The interesting thing is that we are not far off from the woman at the well when we come to Mass. Yeah, our sins might be different. The things we struggle with might be different. But the darkness that we can try and hide, the shame, fear, guilt, addiction, that we can try and just kind of hold off, put to the back burner, try not to expose to Jesus, just say, Jesus, give me whatever you want to give me, fix whatever you want to fix, that's great, but we don't need to talk about real stuff. We can keep that in the shadows. That's not how Jesus operates. He wants to work in the heavy stuff. I recently saw a reel or one of these things online that was shared with me, and it was a Protestant pastor, and he was talking about the impact of Alcoholics Anonymous. You think AA or Sex Addicts Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, a lot of these anonymous groups, the 12-step groups. And he was talking about AA, and one of the things he used an image. He said, a lot of times in AA circles, These meetings, a lot of times in other places in the country, they'll happen in basements of churches. We don't have basements, right? But a lot of times they'll happen in basements of churches. And there's a saying that goes around in AA circles that says, if you want to hear about miracles, go in the church. But if you want to see the miracle, come into the basement. You want to hear about the miracle, go upstairs. But if you want to see a miracle, come downstairs. I just thought it was an interesting image. But then he backed it up and he said, why is it that in the church, we only hear about miracles and we don't see them? Fair question. Why is it that when we go to church, we hear about the healing of the woman at the well? We hear about next week the healing of the blind man. We hear about the raising of Lazarus in a couple of weeks. We hear about these miracles, but we don't always see them. And he made a good comment. He said, maybe Christians need to be more like alcoholics. That's supposed to be kind of like a line, right? But when somebody walks into an AA meeting for the first time, there's a level of humility. There's a level of desperation. There's a level of being fed up with this struggle. There's a certain thing that says whenever I walk into these kind of meetings, number one, I recognize that there's a rock bottom that I've hit. And I say this with reverence. But there's a recognition that the first rule of the first of the 12 steps is recognition of I'm powerless over this. That I can't control myself here. What if every time we walked into church and we would say those words at the beginning of Mass of, I confess to Almighty God and to you, my brothers and sisters, that I have greatly sinned. We would do so with the same level of humility, the same level of desperation, the same level of being fed up with sin, the same level of I don't want to do this anymore. I'm ready to change my life. I'm ready to give up on this stuff. I'm ready to stop going to these empty wells that promise fulfillment, promise to quench my thirst, and yet leave me wanting. What if when we would walk into church, we would do so like somebody who's ready to say, I'm done with that. And Lord, I want you to work. This is how we're called to come to every Mass. Not before a God who judges us, not before a God who's angry with us, not before a God who looks at us and says, I can't believe you did that again. But before a loving Father who says, no, I want to work there because I want you to have a life that's full. I want you to have a life that's restored. I want to give you more than you could ever imagine wanting. The beautiful image of today's gospel is that after Jesus has this exchange and after he has this beautiful thing, it says, but he said to them, sorry. Just then the disciples came. They marveled at what they were seeing. Of course. So the woman left her water jar and went away into the city and started to tell people what happened. The woman comes to this well seeking water. She comes with her bucket. And by the time she finishes this exchange with Jesus, by the time she actually has this conversation, by the time she lets Jesus into the places that she is struggling, the places that she is hurting, the dark places that she doesn't want to let anybody into, what happens? She forgets her bucket behind. Because that's not really what I want. And I've got something greater. If you've ever wondered why at the beginning of Mass we do Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy, I'm going to end with this. It comes actually from Matthew's Gospel. And there's a particular passage where the disciples and Jesus are walking out of Jericho. And this is what it says, and behold, two blind men sitting by the roadside. When they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." The crowd rebuked them, telling them to be silent, but they cried out again, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." They say it twice right there. And then afterwards they says, and Jesus stopped and called them, saying, "What do you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Lord, let our eyes be opened." There's a third time that they asked for something. And Jesus had pity, touched their eyes, and immediately they received their sight and followed him. Whenever we do this threefold, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy, it's as if we are stepping into the place of the blind men. It's as if you and I are stepping into the place of the blind men, and Jesus Christ himself is coming. And he looks at us the same way. Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy. And he looks at us and he says, "What do you want me to do for you?" The Lord is here right now. If God himself right now looks at you and says, "What do you want me to do for you?" How are you responding? Not the surface stuff, not the easy stuff, the places that you need it. What are you asking for? Every time we come to Mass, this is the testament of faith that we approach the Lord with. Lord, I need you in my life. I need your grace. I need your healing. I need your help. And this is where. May tonight as we approach Mass, we do so seeking the Lord to work in the places we need it most. Fear, doubt, hurt, disgust, regret, guilt. May we open our hearts that the Lord can work. That we wouldn't just hear about miracles, that we would see them.